The acrid winds of Orion 7 carried the scent of scorched metal and dust as Lieutenant Maya Rook Harper swept her binoculars across the horizon. The orange-red haze that perpetually hung over this forgotten world made surveillance difficult, but Rook had adapted. Just as she had adapted to being the last living soul at forward listening post Red Dusk. 6 weeks since the last transmission from Allied Command. 6 weeks alone with nothing but the automated systems and the ghosts of her fallen squad. The small outpost, nestled between jagged rock formations, had once housed 12 Marines. Now it housed 1, plus 11 memorial tags lined up precisely on the command console. Rook adjusted her tactical vest and winced as the movement pulled at the barely healed wound on her left side. The last Velkarth raid had nearly finished her, but nearly wasn't enough. Not for Maya Harper. Perimeter scan complete. No anomalies detected. Announced the outpost's AI in its flat, mechanical voice. "Run it again," Rook ordered, her own voice rough from disuse. She didn't trust the automated systems, not since the Velkarth had started using adaptive camouflage. The aliens had proven remarkably adept at exploiting human technology's weaknesses. That's why humanity was losing this war, losing it badly. As the scanner hummed through another cycle, Rook moved to the communications array. Her nightly ritual. Attempt to raise Allied Command, report her status, request evacuation or reinforcement, every night for 6 weeks. Silence had been the only response. Tonight was different. The comms unit crackled with fragmentary transmissions, not from Allied Command, but from the enemy. Rook's pulse quickened as she fine-tuned the frequency. The Velkarth language was a series of clicks and low hums, but after 3 years of combat against them, she'd picked up enough to understand basic communications. What she heard froze her blood. The human, alone, Red Dusk, Omega Squad deploying. Rook's fingers flew across the console, enhancing and isolating the transmission. EU confirm order, single human target, Lieutenant Harper, Omega priority mission. She knew what Omega was. Everyone in the Allied forces knew. Elite warriors. 5 of them, genetically and cybernetically enhanced to perfection. They were the Velkarth's surgical instrument, deployed only for the most significant targets. And they were coming for her. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. Someone in the Velkarth High Command thought one Marine lieutenant was worth sending their most lethal kill squad. Under different circumstances, she might have been flattered. Rook slammed her fist on the emergency transmission button. Allied Command. This is Lieutenant Harper at Red Dusk. I have confirmed Velkarth Omega Squad inbound to my position. Requesting immediate extraction. Repeat. Omega Squad is... The comm system died with a shower of sparks. At the same instant, the perimeter alarm screamed to life, then fell silent just as abruptly. They were already here. Rook moved with practiced efficiency, grabbing her M779 pulse rifle, sidearm, and tactical pack. Years of combat had taught her to prioritize ammunition, medical supplies, water tablets, and the compact multi-tool that had saved her life more times than she could count. As she secured her gear, a subtle vibration ran through the outpost floor. The outer defenses were being breached. Rook accessed the outpost schematics on her wrist display. Red Dusk had been built with multiple escape routes. The Allied forces had learned the hard way to always have a backup plan. The maintenance tunnels beneath the primary command center would lead to an emergency exit on the far side of the ridge. She paused at the memorial tags, running her fingers across the name of Private Eliza Chen. No, not Chen. Memories blurred sometimes after so much loss. Private Eliza Coleman, the youngest of the squad, barely 22, the most recent casualty. "I'll make it count," Rook whispered, taking the tags and securing them in her breast pocket. The first explosion rocked the outpost as Rook descended into the maintenance tunnels. Dust and debris rained down as she secured the hatch behind her. In the narrow confines of the tunnel, Rook activated her night vision implant, bathing the world in shades of green. She moved swiftly but cautiously, placing each boot with deliberate care to minimize noise. The tunnels branched in 3 directions at a junction marked with faded emergency symbols. Rook chose the path leading northwest toward the mining facilities that had been abandoned early in the war. The second explosion, directly overhead, told her the main command center was gone. Good. Let them think she died in the blast. It might buy her precious minutes. Those minutes ended when her motion sensor vibrated against her wrist. Something was moving in the tunnels behind her. Something large. Rook quickened her pace, but the motion sensor's pulses grew more urgent. Whatever was following her was gaining ground. The tunnel widened into a small maintenance bay filled with defunct equipment. Rook scanned the room rapidly, formulating a plan with the instincts honed through countless battles. She positioned herself behind a massive power converter, laid down a proximity mine from her pack, and waited. The mine was her second to last, but this was no time for conservation. The tunnel entrance darkened as a figure emerged. Even in the dim emergency lighting, the silhouette was unmistakable. The segmented armor, the elongated helmet designed to accommodate the Velkarth's bifurcated jaw structure, the distinctive energy rifle cradled in 4-fingered hands. Omega had arrived. The Velkarth warrior moved with unnatural precision, each step calculated. Sensor arrays constantly scanning. This wasn't a common soldier. The armor was too sophisticated, the movement too fluid. Rook held her breath as the warrior approached the proximity mine. 3 steps, 2 steps. The Velkarth paused, head tilting slightly. It had sensed something. Rook squeezed the trigger of her pulse rifle, sending a barrage of energy bolts at the ceiling above the warrior. The weakened structure collapsed, forcing the Velkarth to leap forward directly onto the mine. The explosion filled the chamber with blinding light and concussive force. Rook was ready for it, braced against the converter. The Velkarth was not. When the dust settled, the warrior lay half buried under rubble. Its armor breached in multiple places. Dark ichor seeped onto the floor. Rook approached cautiously, weapon trained on the fallen enemy. The Velkarth's helmet had been partially dislodged, revealing the pale, ridged skin and multifaceted eye that marked their species. The eye fixed on Rook with cold intelligence. "Human," the Velkarth rasped in heavily accented English. "You. Delay. Inevitable." "Maybe," Rook replied. "But I've always been good at delaying." She fired a single shot through the breach in the armor. The Velkarth shuddered once, then went still. 1 down, 4 to go. Rook quickly searched the body, retrieving a Velkarth communication device and a compact energy cell that could power her equipment if necessary. The warrior's weapon was damaged beyond immediate use, but she took it anyway. Velkarth technology could be valuable. A distant rumble reminded her that time was short. The other Omega members would be searching for both her and their missing comrade. Rook continued through the emergency exit, emerging into the harsh Orion 7 night. Twin moons cast competing shadows across the barren landscape. To the east lay the ruins of mining colony Alpha. To the north, the mountains where the Resistance was rumored to have a stronghold. The Resistance, locals who had survived the initial Velkarth invasion, supplemented by stranded Allied soldiers. Rook had written them off as a myth, a story soldiers told to keep hope alive. Now, they represented her best chance at survival. Decision made. Rook set off toward the northern mountains, staying low and using the terrain for cover. The night air was bitter cold, a stark contrast to the scorching days. Her tactical suit regulated her body temperature, but the power cells wouldn't last forever. Nothing on Orion 7 lasted forever, especially not human lives. She'd covered perhaps 2 kilometers when she spotted the drone. Small, spherical, with the distinctive red sensor array of Velkarth reconnaissance technology. It hovered silently about 50 meters ahead, its scan pattern methodical. Rook froze, using a rock formation for cover. The drone hadn't spotted her yet, but its patrol route would bring it directly over her position in minutes. She weighed her options. Shooting it would alert Omega to her location. Letting it pass risked detection. Circumventing its patrol route would cost valuable time. Rook reached into her pack and removed a small signal disruptor, her last one. The device would create a localized electromagnetic pulse, enough to disable the drone temporarily without destroying it. With luck, the Velkarth would attribute the malfunction to Orion 7's notorious electromagnetic storms rather than human intervention. She activated the disruptor and tossed it onto the path of the drone. When the spherical machine passed overhead, it abruptly dropped from the sky, its systems scrambled by the pulse. Rook moved quickly, retrieving both the disruptor and the drone. She pried open the drone's access panel and disconnected its transmitter, rendering it unable to communicate with its masters once it rebooted. Then she extracted its memory core. Velkarth patrol patterns would be valuable intelligence if she reached the resistance. Dawn was breaking over the jagged horizon when Rook reached the foothills of the northern mountains. Her water supply was half depleted, and fatigue pulled at her limbs. The wound in her side had reopened slightly, leaving a small trail of blood on her undershirt. She found shelter in a narrow ravine, concealing herself beneath an overhang. It wasn't ideal, but it would have to do. Rook needed rest if she was going to survive long enough to reach the resistance. Setting proximity alerts on her wrist display, she allowed herself to close her eyes, just for an hour. 1 hour of vulnerability in exchange for renewed strength. She dreamed of Earth, of green fields and blue skies unscarred by war. She dreamed of her squad, alive and laughing around a mess hall table. She dreamed of Private Coleman, asking her about tactical formations with eager eyes. Rook woke to the sound of voices. Human voices. Telling you, I saw something move in there. Probably just another rock crawler. This area's infested with them. Rock crawlers don't carry Alliance gear. Look at those boot prints. Rook remained perfectly still, her hand moving silently to her sidearm. Friend or foe? She wouldn't be taken by surprise. Whoever's in there, a new voice called, deep and authoritative. Come out slowly. We've got the ravine surrounded. Rook weighed her options. If these were resistance fighters, they were her best hope. If not, if they were scavengers or Velkarth collaborators, she'd have to fight her way out. I'm Lieutenant Maya Harper, Allied Forces, she called back. I'm coming out. Don't shoot. Rook emerged cautiously from her hiding place, hands visible but ready to reach for her weapon. 5 figures stood in a loose semicircle around the ravine entrance. Human figures, wearing a mix of civilian clothing and modified Alliance gear. Their weapons, a combination of Alliance-issue rifles and makeshift firearms, were pointed at her, but not with the unwavering precision of trained soldiers, except for the man in the center. He held his weapon like an extension of himself, and his eyes held the hardened look of someone who had seen too much combat. Lieutenant, huh? The man's voice matched his appearance, Rough, weathered. Prove it. Rook slowly reached for her identification tags. Lieutenant Maya Harper, Allied Forces 42nd Reconnaissance Division, stationed at Forward Listening Post Red Dusk until about 12 hours ago, when Velkarth Omega Squad decided to pay a visit. The man's eyes narrowed at the mention of Omega. Omega doesn't waste time on lone lieutenants. Apparently they do now. Rook met his gaze steadily. I killed one of them in the maintenance tunnels under Red Dusk. The other 4 are probably tracking me as we speak. Murmurs rippled through the group. The central figure raised a hand, silencing them. I'm Sergeant Marcus Griffith. Everyone calls me Griff. He lowered his weapon slightly. If what you're saying is true, you've led Omega straight to our location. If what I'm saying is true, you should be thanking me for the warning and helping me set up an ambush. Rook countered, because they're coming whether you help me or not. A tense silence fell over the group. Finally, Griff nodded. Search her, he ordered. Then we move. Quickly. One of the fighters, a young woman with close-cropped hair, approached Rook and patted her down efficiently. She's clean, Sarge, the woman reported, and she's wounded. I'll manage, Rook said flatly. Griff studied her for a moment longer, then nodded again. All right, Lieutenant, you're coming with us, but if this is some kind of trap, I'll put you down myself. Fair enough, Rook replied. The group moved swiftly through the foothills, following paths that weren't visible until you were directly on them. They traveled in silence for nearly an hour before Griff dropped back to walk alongside Rook. How'd you do it? He asked quietly. Do what? Kill an Omega operative. They're supposed to be unstoppable. Rook allowed herself a grim smile. Nothing's unstoppable, Sergeant, not even Omega. They're fast, they're strong, they're well-equipped, but they're not gods. They make mistakes. What mistake did this one make? It underestimated me. Rook glanced at him. They all did. They reached the Resistance stronghold as midday approached. It wasn't what Rook had expected. Rather than a military-style base, the stronghold was an extensive network of caves and tunnels, reinforced with salvaged materials and cleverly concealed from aerial surveillance. Inside, perhaps 100 people moved with purpose, some clearly fighters, others support personnel or civilians. Children darted between makeshift dwellings, their laughter a surreal counterpoint to the grim reality of their existence. Welcome to New Hope, Griff said, gesturing around the main cavern. It's not much, but it's kept us alive for 2 years. I thought the Resistance was a myth, Rook admitted. That's how we prefer it. The fewer people who know we exist, the better our chances of staying that way. He led her to a sectioned-off area that served as an infirmary. A middle-aged woman with streaks of gray in her dark hair approached. Another stray. Griff, the woman asked, her eyes already assessing Rook's injuries. This one's Alliance, Lieutenant Harper. She's had a run-in with Omega. The woman's eyebrows rose. And she's still breathing. Impressive. I'm Dr. Amara Vale. Sit down, Lieutenant. Let me look at that wound. While Dr. Vale treated her injury, Rook explained her situation to Griff and the Resistance leadership, a council of 5 that included both military personnel and civilian representatives. Omega doesn't deploy unless the target is high value, said a former Alliance colonel named Tanner. What makes you so special, Lieutenant? I've been asking myself the same question. Rook replied, The only thing I can think of is that I've been intercepting their communications. Maybe I decoded something important without realizing it. Or maybe you're the last Allied soldier on this part of the continent, suggested a woman introduced as Counselor Perez, a symbol they want to eradicate. Mars, Whatever the reason, Griff cut in, they're coming, and when Omega comes, death follows. Not this time, Rook said firmly. I've already taken one down. We can handle the rest. With what? Colonel Tanner asked incredulously. We have limited weapons, limited ammunition, and people to protect. We can't stand against Omega. We don't have to stand against them. Rook leaned forward, ignoring the pull of her freshly bandaged wound. We just have to be smarter than them. As Rook outlined her plan, a young girl with bright eyes and nimble fingers approached the group. She couldn't have been more than 16, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone much older. Excuse me, she interrupted, but if you're going up against Omega, you'll need tech support. Griff sighed. Zali, this isn't the time. I've been studying the Vel-Karth neural link systems, the girl persisted. Their armor is connected directly to their nervous systems. It's what makes them so fast, so coordinated. Rook's attention sharpened. Go on. It's also a weakness. Zali continued eagerly. Disrupt the link, and you disrupt the soldier. And how exactly do you propose we do that? Colonel Tanner asked, his tone dismissive. Zali pulled a small device from her pocket. With this, it's a modified EMP generator. I've calibrated it to target the specific frequency their neural links operate on. Rook took the device, examining it with newfound respect. You built this? Zali nodded, a flash of pride crossing her features. I was an engineering student before the invasion. Been tinkering ever since. Does it work? Griff asked. In theory, Zali admitted. I haven't exactly had an Omega operative to test it on. You do now, Rook said, reaching into her pack to retrieve the Vel-Karth communication device she'd taken from the fallen warrior. Can you use this to fine-tune your calculations? Zali's eyes widened as she took the device. This is... Yes, I can use this. Give me 2 hours. As Zali hurried away, Rook turned back to the resistance leadership. We have a chance, a real chance. But we need to move quickly. Griff exchanged glances with the others, then nodded. What's your plan, Lieutenant? We set a trap. Rook said simply. But first, we need to understand what we're up against. The Omega I killed was just one soldier. The others will be different, specialized for different combat roles. How do you know that? Colonel Tanner asked. Because that's how I design an elite kill squad. Rook replied. One for stealth, one for heavy assault, one for tech, one for tactical oversight, and one for close quarters combat. I got lucky with the stealth specialist. Caught him off guard. The others won't be so easily surprised. So we need to separate them. Griff concluded. Take them on one by one. Exactly. Rook pulled up a map of the surrounding area on her wrist display. And I know just where to do it. The abandoned mining complex sprawled across the valley floor. A maze of processing facilities, equipment yards, and collapsed tunnels. Once, it had been Orion 7's economic heart. Now it was a graveyard of machinery and broken dreams. Perfect killing ground, Griff murmured as they surveyed the complex from a ridge overlooking the valley. Multiple approaches, plenty of cover, and enough open space to see them coming. Rook nodded. The main processing facility will be our command center. Zali can set up her equipment there. Zali, who had spent the past hours modifying her device using the Vel-Karth technology, looked up from her work. I'll need to position signal amplifiers throughout the complex. The EMP has limited range. We'll handle that, Griff assured her. How many fighters can you spare? Lieutenant? The question caught Rook off guard. She had been operating alone for so long that the concept of commanding others felt foreign. These are your people. Sergeant, you tell me. Griff studied the complex thoughtfully. 8. Any more would just get in the way. 8 it is, Rook agreed. Plus you and me. And me, Zali added firmly. Rook opened her mouth to refuse, but Griff cut her off. We need her. Lieutenant, no one else understands that device the way she does. Reluctantly. Rook nodded. Fine, but you stay in the command center. Zali, no heroics. The girl grinned. Wouldn't dream of it. As the sun began to set, they moved into position. The resistance fighters, a mix of former soldiers and civilians who had learned warfare the hard way, took up strategic positions throughout the complex. Rook and Griff established a command post in the former foreman's office, a structure that offered both visibility and defensibility. Zali worked feverishly to set up her equipment, muttering calculations under her breath as she calibrated the EMP device. It's ready, she announced finally. But we only get one shot. The power requirements are massive, and I had to cannibalize most of our spare cells. One shot is all we need, Rook assured her. What's the range? With the amplifiers in place, about 500 meters from each amplifier. They overlap, so the entire central complex is covered. And the effect? Zali's expression turned serious. It should disrupt their neural links for approximately 3 minutes. During that time, their armor will be dead weight, and their enhanced reflexes will be compromised. 3 minutes, Griff repeated. Not much time. It's enough, Rook said with certainty. We just need to make sure all 4 remaining Omega operatives are within the EMP radius when it triggers. And how do we do that? Griff asked. Rook checked her weapon. We give them what they want. Me. Before Griff could protest, the proximity alert on Rook's wrist display vibrated. Something was approaching from the south. Multiple somethings, moving with coordinated precision. They're here, she said quietly. Through the office's reinforced windows, they watched as 4 figures emerged from the twilight haze, even at a distance. The distinctive silhouettes of Omega were unmistakable. They moved in perfect synchronization, weapons ready, sensors scanning. Look at them, Zali whispered, a mixture of fear and fascination in her voice. They're like machines. Better than machines, Rook corrected. Machines can't improvise. These can. The Omega squad split into 2 pairs, approaching the complex from different angles. Their movements suggested a practiced routine. They had done this many times before, hunting down their targets with ruthless efficiency. They're following standard Velkarth engagement protocols, Rook observed. 2 to flush out the target, 2 to intercept. How do you know their protocols? Griff asked suspiciously. I've been studying them for 3 years, Rook replied, not taking her eyes off the advancing warriors. Know your enemy. Sergeant. The lead pair reached the perimeter of the complex, one of them, larger than the others, with heavier armor and what appeared to be a mounted weapon system, gestured to a side entrance. The second warrior, slimmer and equipped with what Rook recognized as technical analysis gear, moved toward the indicated doorway. Heavy assault and tech specialist. Rook identified them. The other 2 will be tactical command and close quarters combat. They're splitting up, Griff noted. That works in our favor. Rook shook her head. Don't underestimate them. Even separated, each one is lethal, and they maintain constant communication through their neural link. Until we shut it down, Zali reminded them, her hand hovering over the EMP activation switch. Not yet, Rook cautioned. We need all 4 inside the EMP radius. The tech specialist disappeared into the side entrance, while the heavy assault operative took up a position covering the doorway. The remaining pair circled to the opposite side of the complex, moving with the same mechanical precision. "What now?" Griff asked. "Now," Rook said, checking her weapon one final time. "I give them something to chase. Be ready to trigger the EMP when I give the signal." Before either could respond, Rook was moving, slipping out of the office and into the shadowed corridors of the processing facility. She activated her tactical display, which now included a schematic of the complex with the positions of the resistance fighters marked in blue. The Velkarth tech specialist was methodically sweeping the east wing, its sensor array probing every corner. Rook circled behind it, using the facility's labyrinthine layout to her advantage. When she was in position, she deliberately knocked over a piece of debris. The specialist whirled, its weapon tracking toward the sound. Rook was already moving, staying just ahead of its sensors, leading it deeper into the complex, toward the EMP radius. 1 down, 3 to go. The heavy assault operative proved more challenging. It maintained its position at the entrance, unwilling to abandon its post. Rook needed a more direct approach. She signaled to one of the resistance fighters, positioned in an overhead gantry. The woman acknowledged with a single tap on her communicator, then lobbed a flashbang grenade toward the Velkarth warrior. The grenade detonated with a blinding flare and concussive boom. The Velkarth, momentarily disoriented despite its enhanced senses, staggered back. It recovered quickly, but its disciplined stance had been broken. It moved into the complex, seeking the source of the attack. 2 down. The tactical command and close-quarters specialists were more cautious, working in tandem to methodically clear each section of the western wing. Rook observed them from a concealed position, noting their movements, looking for patterns or weaknesses. The close-quarters specialist carried no ranged weapons, only what appeared to be energy blades extending from its gauntlets. The tactical commander carried a standard Velkarth rifle, but seemed more focused on coordination than direct combat. Rook keyed her communicator. "Griff, I need a distraction on the west side. Something big." "On it," came the terse reply. Moments later, a series of explosions rocked the western perimeter, the resistance fighters detonating the charges they had planted earlier. The blasts weren't powerful enough to seriously damage the Omega operatives, but they served their purpose. The remaining Velkarth warriors moved toward the center of the complex, converging on the source of the disturbances. All 4 were now within the EMP radius. Rook keyed her communicator again. "Now, Zali." In the command center, Zali slammed her hand down on the activation switch. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, a wave of electromagnetic energy pulsed outward from the amplifiers, washing over the complex in an invisible tide. The effect on the Omega Squad was immediate and dramatic. Their fluid movements suddenly became jerky, uncoordinated. The lights on their armor flickered and died. The heavy assault operative's mounted weapon system powered down with an audible whine. 3 minutes. That's all they had. Rook didn't waste a second. She emerged from cover, pulse rifle at the ready, and opened fire on the closest target, the tech specialist. Without its defensive systems, the Velkarth's armor offered only basic protection. Rook's shots found the gaps, penetrating vital areas. The specialist collapsed, dark ichor pooling beneath its twitching form. 2 for Rook, 3 remaining. The resistance fighters surged from their positions, concentrating fire on the heavy assault operative. Even without its powered systems, the Velkarth's armor was formidable, absorbing multiple hits, but it couldn't move quickly enough to retaliate effectively. Eventually, a well-placed shot breached its helmet, and the massive warrior fell. 3 down, 2 to go. The close-quarters specialist, despite its disabled armor, was still deadly. It charged the nearest resistance fighter, energy blades temporarily offline, but the physical blades still lethal. The fighter went down under its assault. Griff intercepted the Velkarth warrior, emptying his weapon into its midsection. The creature staggered but kept coming, driven by a mixture of training and rage. It slashed at Griff, opening a gash across his chest before a second resistance fighter shot it from behind. The combined assault finally brought it down. 4 eliminated. Only the tactical commander remained. Rook searched frantically for the final Omega operative. The EMP's effects would be wearing off soon, and once the tactical commander regained control of its systems, the advantage would shift dramatically. Movement at the far end of the processing floor caught her attention. The commander was retreating, heading for higher ground, the central spire that housed the facility's main control systems. "It's making for the spire," Rook called over the communicator. "I'm in pursuit." "Wait for backup," Griff ordered, pressing a hand to his bleeding chest. "No time," Rook replied, already running. "The EMP's effects will wear off any second." She raced across the processing floor, vaulting over fallen equipment and debris. The tactical commander had reached the spire's access ladder and was climbing rapidly, its movements becoming smoother as the EMP's effects diminished. Rook followed, pushing her body to its limits. Her wound protested with each movement, but she ignored the pain. This was their last chance to eliminate Omega completely. She reached the spire's observation deck to find the tactical commander waiting for her. Its armor had reactivated, the neural link restored. The Velkarth stood tall, its posture radiating confidence despite the loss of its squad. "Lieutenant Maya Harper," it said, its voice a modulated hiss through its translator. "You have proven unexpected." "Sorry to disappoint," Rook replied, keeping her weapon trained on the warrior. "Not disappointment. Appreciation." The Velkarth made a gesture that might have been respect. "You have accomplished what many thought impossible." "Just doing my job." "As am I." The commander's weapon hummed as it powered up. "It is regrettable that one of us must die." "Doesn't have to be that way," Rook said, though she knew it was futile. "Surrender. I can guarantee fair treatment." The Velkarth made a sound that might have been laughter. "We do not surrender, Lieutenant. It is not our way." "Didn't think so." The Velkarth attacked with blinding speed, its neural link fully restored. Rook barely dodged the first blast, feeling the heat of it sear past her face. She returned fire, but the commander's armor deflected her shots with ease. They circled each other on the observation deck, exchanging fire, looking for openings. Rook was outmatched in terms of technology and enhancement. But she had something the Velkarth lacked, desperation born of protecting others. The commander pressed its advantage, driving Rook back toward the edge of the deck. One more step, and she would plummet to the processing floor below. "Your resistance ends here," the Velkarth stated, raising its weapon for the killing shot. Rook's hand closed around Zali's modified Velkarth communicator in her pocket. The girl had said it was calibrated to the neural link frequency. Perhaps. With a desperate lunge, Rook hurled the device directly at the commander's helmet. The Velkarth batted it aside effortlessly, but that moment of distraction was all Rook needed. She charged, tackling the warrior and sending them both crashing through a doorway into the spire's interior. They tumbled into a zero-gravity maintenance corridor, a section of the facility designed for servicing equipment in Orion 7's low-gravity periods. Both combatants floated free, momentarily disoriented by the sudden lack of gravity. The Velkarth recovered first, using its armor's thrusters to stabilize itself. It raised its weapon, but Rook was ready. She fired a precise shot at the ceiling panel above the warrior, causing a shower of debris that disrupted its aim. Taking advantage of the zero-G environment, Rook pushed off from a wall, propelling herself toward the Velkarth. She collided with it hard, grabbing its weapon arm and forcing it away. They grappled in the weightless environment, spinning slowly as each fought for dominance. The Velkarth was stronger, its augmented physiology giving it a significant advantage. But Rook was fighting for more than just herself. She was fighting for Griff, for Zali, for the Resistance, for every human on Orion 7 who had suffered under Velkarth occupation. She managed to get a hand on the commander's helmet, fingers searching for the neural link access port that Zali had described. Finding it, she jammed her multi-tool into the port and twisted with all her strength. The Velkarth convulsed as its neural link short-circuited, sending feedback directly into its nervous system. Its grip on Rook loosened, and she pushed away, retrieving her weapon as she did. The commander floated limply in the zero-G corridor, its systems in disarray. Rook leveled her pulse rifle at its head. "This is for Private Coleman," she said quietly, and pulled the trigger. Silence fell over the spire, broken only by the distant sounds of the Resistance securing the complex below. Rook allowed herself to float for a moment, the adrenaline slowly draining from her system, leaving behind exhaustion and a dull ache where her wound had reopened. Eventually, she navigated back to the gravity-controlled sections of the facility and made her way down to the main floor. The Resistance fighters had gathered there, treating their wounded and securing the Velkarth bodies and technology. Griff sat on a crate, his chest bandaged, face pale but determined. Zali worked nearby, already examining one of the fallen Omega operative's armor with scientific curiosity. "It's done," Rook announced as she approached. "Omega is eliminated." A cheer went up from the Resistance fighters, a sound so foreign in the war-torn landscape of Orion 7 that it momentarily startled Rook. She had almost forgotten what victory felt like. "You did it," Griff said, standing despite his injury. "You actually did it." "We did it," Rook corrected him. "All of us." Zali looked up from her examination, eyes bright with excitement. "The Neuralink technology is intact in this one. With this, I might be able to develop countermeasures for all Velkarth combat systems. That could change the course of the war." Griff realized. Rook nodded. "Which is why we need to get this information to Allied Command immediately." She moved to the command center and activated the long-range transmitter that Zali had set up. It took several attempts, but eventually, a connection was established. "Allied Command, this is Lieutenant Maya Harper, formerly of Forward Listening Post Red Dusk. I'm transmitting from Resistance Stronghold Coordinates So. We have eliminated Velkarth Omega Squad and recovered critical neural link technology. Request immediate extraction and technical support team." For a long moment, there was only static. Then, "Lieutenant Harper, this is Allied Command. We thought you were dead. Extraction teams are inbound to your coordinates. Hold position." Relief washed over Rook, tempered by the knowledge that this was just one victory in a much larger war. But it was a significant victory, perhaps the turning point they had been fighting for. As dawn broke over Orion 7, casting long shadows across the mining complex, Rook stood on the observation platform of the central spire. Below, Resistance fighters and the newly arrived Allied forces worked together, securing the area and preparing for the next phase of the war. Griff joined her, moving stiffly but steadily. "Allied Command is calling it a game changer. The neural link data alone could give us the edge we've been looking for." "It's a start," Rook agreed. "They're already talking about promotions, medals, You're going to be the hero of Orion 7. Rook shook her head. I'm not interested in being a hero. I just want to finish this war. Well, you've given us a fighting chance. Griff studied her for a moment. What will you do now? They've offered you a place on the command staff, far from the front lines. Rook looked out over the harsh landscape that had nearly claimed her life multiple times. She thought of her fallen squad, of Private Coleman, of the 11 memorial tags still in her breast pocket. My place is here, she said finally. With the resistance, with the people actually fighting this war. Griff smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. We could use someone who can kill Omega operatives. As they watched, Allied dropships descended from the morning sky, bringing reinforcements and hope to a world that had seen too little of either. For the first time in years, the humans of Orion 7 were no longer just surviving. They were beginning to believe they could win. And it had all started because the Velkarth had made one critical mistake. They had hunted a single human marine, Lieutenant Maya Rook Harper. The biggest mistake of their lives.